All right, guys, welcome back. BDTR Live, Saturday Night Live. I think it's Saturday, right?
I think
Yeah,
so.
it's been a long week. So we got Danny Rivera with us tonight, and we are going to get into this, what I call the war on CBD. I think it's interesting that this is what, like, the Delta 8's been sold for, 5 years now in Pennsylvania. It's been legal, and now all of a sudden it's a problem.
Yeah, first off, I'd just like to thank you for asking me to be on and to talk about this a little bit more. Hopefully, I can provide a little bit of clarification, but yeah, this is a wild situation for sure. It's kind of like the old days of alcohol prohibition coming full circle.
The old mobster
Uh,
days.
yeah, but it's just the war has changed. It's become cannabis, and it's ironic because the area that we're in is the home of Harry Anslinger, who was the one who kind of started the whole reefer madness original
Oh, yeah.
war on cannabis.
He was he was
He was
just a
actually
great
born in
human being.
Altoona. Yeah, fantastic.
Mm.
I think we got a little bit of a delay in the call too.
uh,
No, that's hey, we'll work with it, right? It's live. Shit happens.
yeah, it's all good. Yep.
So whenever the because my first thought whenever I saw the charges against Mike, the owner of that other store that just got raided. First thing I thought is, why the hell are we spending our taxpayer dollars on this? Because not only does it not fit the law, because and I don't understand why it's so convoluted because the articles in the paper and stuff keep saying that all the law is gray and all of this, and it's really not. Not
It's
not that
not.
I've seen.
No, it's not gray at all, actually. And if I could, I'm a owner of a store myself.
Hmm.
True Healing Concepts is my own store, and it's a small mom and pop. Just me and my wife put it together ourselves.
Hmm.
And so, in the past 2.5 years, just about, we've been fighting a cannabis case ourselves while simultaneously building our hemp store. And so I myself took it upon myself to do as much research as I could regarding not just the chemical makeup, the medicinal benefits of cannabis, but also how the law applies to what's legal cannabis, what's not legal cannabis. So I just kind of wanted to lay a little bit of groundwork for my input on the situation.
Right.
But as far as the law is concerned, it is not gray at all. It is written in a way, and it's written specifically to designate what is legal cannabis and what is not legal cannabis.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of the lawmakers will turn around and say that because of the way it's written, that it's a loophole. But the reality of it is, there's ways to go about amending laws,
Hmm.
and what they're doing is not that at all. So if they are admitting that it's a loophole that allows certain products to be sold, then they're also admitting that it's
That
a
it's
legal
not ill.
product as far as
Right.
the law is written.
Yep.
Talk about loophole.
Yeah, well, and
Yes,
so
yes.
the big kicker that I've seen is it's the 0.3% THC is, and that's the state and federal law. As long as it's under that, it's legal.
Yeah, it's actually even more specific than that. It's Delta 9 THC is the barometer.
Hmm.
Basically, if it's above 0.3% Delta 9, it's illegal marijuana. If it's below 0.3% Delta 9 specifically, it's legally hemp.
Right.
So both hemp and marijuana are cannabis, but as far as the law is concerned, Delta 9 THC is the only legal barometer to determine if it's
Hmm.
uh, uh, illegal marijuana or legal hemp.
Well, I found it interesting because that one article I referenced, I believe it was in the last podcast or the one before that, from the issue with the guy from Lancaster and the state police, their crime lab or whatever it was, they said that, there's these different strains, and like strains 3 and 4 are actually 8, and the law doesn't actually, they're trying to make it more than it is, basically, and apply things that aren't actually in the law, essentially, from what I understand.
Yes, and yes, that is exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to say that basically they're using an old version. Well, it's not even an old, but it was last amended in 2016, the Pennsylvania Controlled Substances Act, essentially. And
Hmm.
it does list those other deltas that you mentioned, but it specifically lists those deltas while not listing uh, Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 11, these legal hemp products that are being sold. So for them to come out and say now that those ones that they have listed in the Controlled Substances Act are actually these, well, that's kind of subverting the law itself also. It's like that's not made clear in the law. And that's where the problem is. If they're not made clear in the law, then we don't understand Delta 8 and Delta 10 and so on to be these ones that you have listed.
Because
Right.
the law's not supposed to be so convoluted that a common man can't read it and understand it.
Exactly. I'm glad that you brought that up because this whole situation, it really does boil down to that because the vessel that I'm using to talk about rights is cannabis because I'm heavily involved, but it is about people's natural born rights and how you said the Constitution itself was written in a way that the common man could understand it. It wasn't
Exactly.
supposed to be interpreted by lawyers or judges. We were supposed to understand. It was supposed to be written in a way that was simple enough for us common folk to be able to read and understand what it says.
Hmm.
Shout out to Mr. Musser, my history teacher, because I specifically actually bringing that up the one history class about the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. That's why it kind of popped in my head. But thank you, Mr. Musser. You were a great teacher.
Yes, yes, it is the truth, and why shouldn't it be that way? Why should we not be able to understand the laws that govern us?
Hmm. Well, and here's the
Because
thing too: we have
we can't
police
be in.
officers enforcing laws that either aren't don't exist or they don't understand them. That's a serious problem, also.
Yes, that is the biggest problem with this whole situation, whether it was cannabis or not. Cannabis just happened to put it on the front page.
Hmm.
Exactly.
But when you know that they're doing that kind of stuff, it could apply to anything they're doing now. And now
Exactly.
the people don't know, and they're essentially, let's say, the prosecutors essentially stacking felonies. The people don't know what the law actually is, and then when the prosecutor takes away felonies and says, "Oh, here's a good deal," people take it usually with the swipe of a pen because it
Exactly.
appears to be a good plea bargain
Hmm.
when the people themselves didn't know the law. And the reality is a lot of times the prosecutors, law enforcement themselves don't know the law that they're enforcing, but they have the power of force. They have the monopoly on force. Well,
Well,
what do you do about it when they cuff you and take you away? There's nothing you can do about it.
right. Yeah, that's what I always say. On the streets, you don't really have rights. The police can do whatever they want to you, and you have to deal with it in court later.
Yes, and that's a travesty of the law. That's an inversion of the justice system, you
Hmm.
know.
Yep,
It essentially
absolutely.
makes us guilty, and we have to prove ourselves innocent instead of the presumption of innocence
Yep.
Exactly.
and
It's
them having
backwards.
to prove our guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
It's very vast. Another question I have, because I don't remember if it was applied as well to the case in Hollidaysburg, but the one in Lancaster, when they confiscated all this stuff and tested it, they were claiming that numbers were too high and whatnot. How, in any way, shape, or form, would that be the store's fault? Because you all don't test it when you get it. You just go off of what the manufacturer tells you. Okay, this is what percentages of whatever's in it.
Well, that
Here you
was
go.
that. I knew exactly what you're talking about because that's in the article, okay, about the Hollidaysburg
Okay.
store. But I posted the narrative from the police report. The way that guy wrote that, but it never says anything about anything being sent off for testing. Okay, so like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, that's a big question. I read the affidavit myself. Mike asked me to come and I just reached out to him because member of the cannabis community. I really do believe that it's just a way that if we can come together for the right way in the right ways for the right things that it's strength in numbers essentially. So because I
Mhm.
believe in cannabis. I reached out to the guy. Like I said, I read up on the laws myself just to stay in compliance myself, but also, I'm simultaneously battling a cannabis case myself. So it makes sense to be, versed on the law in the industry that you're trying to be in. But I read the
Absolutely.
affidavit, and I think that it said something about testing, but not about it being sent away. So, from my understanding, I'm not 100% sure about this,
Mhm.
but they use a field test to test it, which essentially,
Which probably isn't
if
accurate at
anybody
all
knows about
either.
field tests, they're junk. They are junk.
Mhm.
And now, specifically when it comes to cannabis, right? Their tests are labeled THC, but they test for the presence of cannabinoids, period. So a CBD would set off a CBD, non-psychoactive at all, won't get you high. CBD would set off a field test because it's a cannabinoid that would trigger the
Exactly.
THC part of the field test.
Right. And I
So
now.
they're not even accurate, especially with the way the law is.
Mhm.
All hemp, all legal hemp will test as if it's hot THC.
Right. So I don't know Mike personally. I haven't talked to him, but I have had several people tell me that they've been in his store. He's a really nice guy. He believes in this. He's doing the CBD thing because he wants to help people out. And the state police are painting him like, he's this dirty drug dealer. And I just think that's so wrong.
I'm glad you brought that up
It
because
is
I was going to bring that up
absolutely.
because I was going to say people who open stores like that, y'all want to help other people.
Mhm.
That's all you
Yes.
want. You want to see people get help and relief. And if you have a way that you can provide that as a middleman for them, that's why you
Yeah,
do it. So
without
for
going to the doctor and getting these
exactly,
nasty ass drugs that you probably will get addicted to, you know.
exactly. But they demonize you like you're doing something so horrible. No, you were out there helping folks.
Yep.
And that's what
Yes, it is,
infuriates
it is
me.
about that. It is about the holistic medicine and trying to transition people from pharmaceuticals and things like that to
Hmm.
a more holistic herbal. Cannabis was a medicine before the war on it. Before Reefer Madness, it was in pharmacies back in the early
Yep.
1900s and so on and so forth. It was legitimately used as a medicine in the forms that it is now, with the tinctures, with oils, balms, things like that, and even smokable. It
Flowers.
was a medicine. It was in pharmacies back in the late
Well,
1800s,
it's
early
it's
1900s.
still a medicine. It's just the government doesn't like it.
Yes,
So,
yes,
I
it's
feel
a
very
med-
strongly
it's a
about
way for
cannabis.
you to treat yourself instead of having to go
Exactly.
to them to get
yep.
treated.
And that infuriates them because I personally, as a patient, have gone round for round for round with doctors because I have Crohn's disease. The first thing they want to do for Crohn's is either put you on Remicade or Humira or some kind of really harsh IV medicine. And I did try it, and my body rejected it horribly. I literally passed out while holding my 9 month old. Thank God my brother was there to catch her and take her from me because I didn't feel it coming. I just hit the deck.
Hmm.
So I decided to start looking and asking my doctors, is there anything else I can do? Started doing my research into medical marijuana, and I found that with things that were high in like humulene, myrcene, and I'm probably going to butcher this next one, carpopoline, those are all really good
Uh-huh.
anti-inflammatories, and they also help with my sleep issues, and they help the inflammation, they help with my appetite. And since starting it as a patient, I don't have to get any of these other really harsh medicines, and I haven't had a flare up since I started. I haven't needed surgery again like I did when I was on the other medicines and constantly having flares and pain. So
Well,
for
and how many hoops did you
oh
remember
my
when we were still in
god,
Pennsylvania? She paid for her new because you have to renew your card every so often. She paid for it, and it got
Every year.
lost in the mail, so she couldn't go to the dispensary. It was ridiculous.
yep,
And you couldn't even show like through emails like, hey, I got it done. I got it taken care
yep.
of. Look.
The only one dispensary let me in one time just because I basically got lucky and a pharmacist was there so she could log into like the state site to see all my certificates were up, and as a medical
Uh-huh.
professional she could say that in her medical opinion that it would greatly hurt the patient if she didn't allow me to get the medicine that I was there to pick up because she also saw my diagnosis and we had talked about it. She let me in once. That was the only time I could get in. So I didn't have it. Then they tell me it gets lost in the mail and I have to wait an entire month for it to not show up, for them to send it again and then it not show up again. No, sorry, it did show up after another month. And then I go in and it won't scan because they never deactivated the card that got lost.
Yeah.
So I still can't go in.
Uh, currently.
That was when we were still in Pennsylvania. Down
Oh,
here, I've gotten everything squared away. It was a much easier process down
okay.
here.
Okay. Good. Good.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah, it's just and it's total nothing but bureaucratic bullshit, you know,
Yes,
and people are
exactly.
suffering because of that.
Yes, exactly. And that's see I've been a medical marijuana patient for at least 2 years, maybe 3 years.
Hmm.
And I the thing about cannabis versus the pharmaceuticals is that the ironic part about it is that the politicians, the lawmakers, the prosecutors, the law enforcement is they all possess an endocannabinoid system, and that's the system in our body that helps to transition cannabis benefits to our immune system.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm over here just doing a
Every
little
one of
dance.
us possesses that system.
I'm over here doing
So
the dance because
even
I
the
literally was just
lawmakers
telling
that
him
are
about this.
against it, even the lawmakers that are against it, the prosecutor, Mr. Weeks himself, possesses an
Exactly.
endocannabinoid system, which he could benefit off of cannabis use. But
Exactly.
it's so demonized because people only focus on THC, the psychoactive effects,
Hmm.
and they just think that everybody abuses cannabis.
Well,
But in the right form, in the right dose, and so on, if you really do take it like a medicine, it is very medicinal for us.
And
well,
it's a lot
and that's
easier on
the
your
other thing.
body.
That's the other thing too. Is okay. So because there's several states now where it's recreational is legal, and guess what? If somebody just wants to sit around all day and get high, that's their choice. Why are we punishing the people that are using it as a medicine because well somebody's just going to get high? Like who cares? They're not
Right.
hurting anyone. You
There's still
know.
people that are going to
Exactly.
go and do it because there's still the black market. Obviously, cocaine's not legal, heroin's not legal. People are still getting high on that. If
Right.
they want it for the wrong reason, they'll go and find a way to get it. And
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
goes to anything. So to blanket punish everyone else that can benefit from it, like you were saying, is ridiculous.
Yes. Yes. And that's my biggest thing about it is that the criminalization of it here in Pennsylvania, especially, but in other places that are harsher on cannabis, it's
Hmm.
essentially uh, Pennsylvania has medical marijuana dispensaries. Now, marijuana is supposedly still a Schedule One drug, meaning it has no medical efficacy.
Hmm.
It has no medical benefits, but they have medical marijuana dispensaries. So the existence of a medical marijuana dispensary disputes the idea that it's a Schedule One drug.
Yep. Well,
But
that
with
goes back
Pennsylvania,
to the Harry Anslinger shit. He was a big force behind originally having that happen.
yes, absolutely. And see, me, I'm Hispanic. I'm Puerto Rican.
Hmm.
So a lot of this cannabis, advocacy I have, it means a little more to me because I understand the history of it, the history of reefer madness,
Hmm.
and understanding that I'm essentially in the belly of the beast of where the guy came from that this all started.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of like a full circle moment where you got a Puerto Rican guy fighting the war on cannabis in the belly of the beast, reefer madness, where the guy came from, where he used negative stereotypes of blacks and Hispanics
Yep.
to wage his war on drugs.
Yeah, I think honestly we're gonna have to do an episode just on that. I mean, that Harry Anslinger is a fucking piece of human garbage. Like I can't emphasize that enough. If you don't believe me, do some research on this guy.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
most fucked up part is there's still a plaque at the courthouse in Blair County honoring him. All right. So what's that tell you?
Yeah, exactly. I tell people that all the time about his plaque being hung up there. I'm like, they memorialize the guy in
Yep.
their courthouse. So,
Yep.
and I'm gonna make another point of that because Mike specifically with his CBD store, him and his wife ran their store in Altoona for like 3 years, 2.5 years in
Mm-hmm.
Altoona. They were by Eaton Park, a Holiday Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
They ran their store in Altoona with no issues from law enforcement, no issues from anything. But the closer they get to that plaque there in Hollidaysburg,
It's
all
cursed.
of a sudden they were in Hollidaysburg for 10 months and they got
Well, do
raided.
you?
It's like that's a little funny that they've been in business for years,
Yes.
Yeah, that's weird that suddenly
and
they
they
had to
moved to
charge.
Hollidaysburg and all of a sudden there's
Well, I mean,
all of a
I
sudden
know he's being targeted. Do you know specifically why they have such a stick up their ass about him? Did something happen? I mean, if you can't talk about it, that's fine. I'm just curious.
Well, I'm gonna. Another reason I stood up for him was because it's not just him; it's Hollidaysburg, and
Hmm.
there is prejudice and racism out there. But it's not just a prejudice that is racist. It's if you are not from Hollidaysburg, if you did not grow up there, if you didn't go to
Yep.
school there, you could be white, black, brown, whatever. If you didn't grow up in Hollidaysburg,
Hmm.
you're being investigated. They want to know who you are, where you came from, what you're doing here.
Yep.
And that's how these things happen out there.
That's
It's
high
that
school
super small
behavior.
town mentality where
Yep.
if you're not from that town and you didn't grow up there, you're under investigation.
Yep. Well, and the really crazy thing, because I know for a fact Hollidaysburg PD has a very bad habit of they'll sit outside of a bar, okay, watch somebody stumble out drunk as a skunk, and they'll follow them down the road, maybe a couple miles sometimes, so they
Let
can.
them get in their car, let them drive away, right?
How is that not putting the? I mean, if you want to sit there and stop people, call them a fucking Uber or something.
I've seen them do it multiple times when I was an Uber picking people up from the bars. Them sitting there lurking,
Yeah,
watching.
and
And then they
then
stare you down like you're doing something wrong. Like, bro, I'm there to get the drunk guy so he's not causing you problems. Don't give me
exactly,
dirty looks.
and then they get the these awards, for
Yeah.
I got 100 DUIs this year stops
Yeah.
or whatever, and it's like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? Like it's such a joke.
Well, a little background information with my case, I lived in Altoona for a while and I never had to deal with any problems. I
Hmm.
lived in Hollidaysburg for a month and some change and I got my house raided for drugs.
Wow,
Yeah.
Yeah, hell no.
that's
I mean, a month and a little over a month and my house is raided for drugs. I'd never had any issues in Altoona. I moved there in a month and some change later and my house is getting raided and guns are pointed at my kids and the drug in question, alleged marijuana. So yeah,
Wow.
wow.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, especially with your kids there. I would have gone
Yeah,
ballistic.
my kids have PTSD. Me and my wife, our kids,
God.
they literally pointed guns at one of my, like a stick up. They point.
Did we lose?
Did we
Did we
lose
lose
them?
you?
The police pointed guns at the awake son to go get the other son that was sleeping and wake him up at gunpoint.
Jesus
So
Christ.
Wow.
over alleged marijuana. So
Oh, I
I'm
had
so
APD
sorry.
raid me one time. My buddy was over, and I guess one of the neighbors called in and said somebody got shot in my house, and I don't know, either that wasn't true or we were pretty good at hiding bodies. I don't know. But
yeah,
it was unreal. Like you wake up, I was literally almost asleep, and this bullhorn it says occupants of 210 Fourth Avenue, come out with your hands up, and crazy Chris will get in there. I know where he lives.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
But yeah, it was just kind of unreal. And then my buddy, when he comes out, he's like putting his freaking pants on and shit, playing with his belt buckle. And like, get your hands up! I'm like, Jesus, he's gonna get shot. But it's funny now. But when it was going on, I'm like, what the fuck
right.
is
It's
happening?
scary. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Exactly. You're like, what the hell is going on? What are you guys doing?
yep.
I mean, it caught me by surprise. I saw that. I didn't even. Uh, everybody. I was the last person taken into custody. It was my mother lived out there. My brothers. We had bought a bigger house, and it was towards the end of COVID. Not bought. We rented a bigger house,
Hmm.
but near the end of COVID, and just because of finances and everything, we were like, hey, if we can consolidate our finances, then we could live better off. You get
Absolutely.
what I'm saying?
Work
So
smarter.
that was the reason for the move, and we had just found a big enough place for us. It just happened to be out there. We just didn't know what was going to be facing us, once we got there.
Yeah,
So
that's wild. But I mean, I remember even because I went to, I'm originally from Martinsburg, so I went to Central. But I remember even like the Hollidaysburg people. They all just came across as like the stuck up rich people, you know. And I'm
yeah,
sure it's
yeah,
not everybody, but there's a reason there's that stereotype out there.
yeah, yes, yes. It is that really, and there is money out there, but if you look at it logistically, it's because they control all the power in the county. You get what? So that's why they would have that air of arrogance about them also, because all the power is consolidated out there.
Hmm.
That's where the main courthouse is. That's where the prosecutor is. That's where the state police is out there, the barracks. So
Do you remember the Scott Vinowski case? Vinowski, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but he was the guy that they had two, it was the principal and somebody else. They had, somebody called like threats into the school or something. They're like, oh, it's definitely this guy. So he gets arrested, gets his picture on TV, and they had the phone number of the caller, but Hollidaysburg PD just decided to get, or maybe it was PSP. I don't remember, but one of them, they just said, oh, we're just going to go pick this guy up, even though they had the exculpatory evidence that it definitely wasn't him. And it gets even better because this guy, when he was like an intern at the school or something, and he made a report to Childline. So it's like now you got a motive that they were pissed off that he made this report, about something going on, and oh, we're going to throw him under the bus because oh, we know for sure that was him, but it wasn't him.
right, right. Yeah, that sounds eerily similar to my circumstances with the call, and they had exculpatory evidence, so on and so forth. Uh, Obviously, I'm trying to be careful with what I say, but
Yeah.
essentially, police got a warrant based on an anonymous tip, and then another neighbor tip, and which essentially was supposed to corroborate the anonymous tip.
So what was
And
it
it
like?
was
Oh, the
just
brown guy over there slinging weed. Like
honestly,
seriously.
honestly, in the affidavit, it didn't even say that much. It did not even say that much. They vaguely referenced it as Title 35 activity, but they didn't say exactly what the anonymous witness said. Now, the problem with that is when it comes to an anonymous witness, there has to be specific information to prove the reliability of the witness. So the more anonymous they are, the more detail they have to provide,
Hmm.
essentially. So they didn't provide any detail about what they just vaguely used cop speak and said
Yeah.
that anonymous male advised there had been a lot of traffic coming and going. And then the affiant was notified regarding another complaint from a neighbor regarding possible Title 35 activities taking place.
I wouldn't be
So,
surprised if PSP just made that entire thing up. And it pisses me off because back in the
well,
day,
this was Hollidaysburg police,
the
right?
holidays, okay, I got you.
Yeah, so basically they used the anonymous male saying, "Oh, it looks like there's a lot of traffic coming and going," and then they used the neighbor tip to basically corroborate the anonymous tip without the anonymous tip providing any real specific information other than supposedly traffic coming and going to and from the residence.
Let's just take a second to recognize how quick your entire life can be destroyed because somebody makes up a bullshit story.
Yes, yes.
Because, like you said, it's the
And
burden
my
of
thing is
proof is
the
on
whole
you
thing
to
about the
defend
call
yourself.
log. Yeah, the whole thing about the call log is we got records. We actually got the 911 transcripts to see what was said actually,
Hmm.
because basically they had the anonymous witness, then they had the neighbor call, and the neighbor apparently provided registration information of vehicles that were coming and going to and from the residence. And when we
You sitting there with
actually got the 911,
binoculars?
Yeah, Jesus.
well, they had cameras up apparently, and were just sitting inside their house watching what was going on in front of our house. Apparently,
I used to have those kind of neighbors.
mind you, I told you that it was towards the end of COVID.
You had a bunch
Me
of
and
people living there, so it makes sense if you have a
yes,
lot of traffic.
Yep.
we had 4 vehicles ourselves. We owned 4 vehicles that we parked out in front of the house ourselves.
So that makes sense.
So 4 vehicles, they're saying, well, back and forth traffic of the 4 vehicles, and that's basically that led them to search our trash every week.
Wow.
Yeah, and then
Well, you know, maybe
Basically,
in Hollidaysburg they have an ordinance where each house is only allowed to have 3 vehicles, kind of like that one up in Tyrone where you're not allowed to get drunk in your own house. Remember that one?
Yeah.
It's just
Or maybe it's like
that's
the first
crazy
apartment.
because I don't even understand how you could stop that. You
it,
know, like
it's well, it's I was kind of being facetious, but we had a guy on a couple weeks ago where basically there was a small domestic dispute with him and his wife and his daughter, and they went over to the police department, and he essentially was just drunk and fell asleep, and PSP showed up and destroyed his freaking house.
yeah, terrible.
Yeah.
How easily, you know, just a call like that could do that, like you said, you know.
But, you know, when you call them and you actually freaking need them to show up and do something, they don't. For example, without going too far down the rabbit hole here, I actually had to call when I lived out in Roaring Spring, the police, because when I got home the one night, I immediately realized that someone had broken into my house. And as soon as I went through the house, I realized I had certain things missing. They took their sweet ass time showing up. Now, keep in mind, it's just me. I'm a young 20-something-year-old female in the middle of the night. Positive, I'm pretty sure I know who it is, being a vindictive, violent ex. I expressed that to them and asked them to simply even do a walkthrough just to make sure he's not still hiding in there. They claim that they did. I am not comfortable, so I leave. I go back 2 days later, and yeah, no, he had been sleeping underneath my stairs the entire time. I found the blankets and the bottles of pee and the ashed out cigarettes and all the stuff food wise that had been missing tossed underneath there. So thank God I didn't stay that night. But you know, you ask them to do a simple freaking walkthrough and they can't. But you know, oh my God, an anonymous tip. We better go raid this house. And,
Yeah, exactly.
They're rushing to investigate that, you know. And that's the thing. The thing is, they anonymous this, neighbor tip that, because things always come out. We know who it was, and we knew who it was before we actually got the 911 transcripts. We had a neighbor right next to us
Mm-hmm.
that we know she was the one that made these calls, and that her boyfriend was the anonymous tip, and she was the neighbor tip coming from the same house. So basically, that's how they did it.
Well, that sounds like criminal conspiracy to me.
that's exactly what I was
well,
about to say.
we're gonna when I said there's some stuff going on in my case, I totally meant it, and I have all the paperwork to back it up because we later got info from that same witness that we know who it is, and it's backed up through the transcripts that they had racial prejudice towards us, and that was one of the very big reasons that they called in those tips.
Well, and that's pretty fucked up. The cops are more than willing to just go along with it. Like, oh yeah, you know, whatever, we'll arrest him. Fuck it, who cares? He's got to pay for an attorney and defend himself.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. And apparently they use these. They weaponize law enforcement to get anybody out of town that they don't want to be there, essentially. And that's why you know, my situation's eerily similar to what's happening with Mike, because that's essentially what they want. They don't want him around there. They don't want him there. They don't want him selling anything there. They don't want him living there. So
well, and the worst part is
law enforcement to try to get you out of town.
Yeah, so and they're going after you. I mean, you're gainfully employed. You're trying to this store you're running, you're trying to help the community. I mean, you're doing more than the average person, and they want to get rid of you. Like how does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Right. It's like they only want the businesses there to expand their town. That
the
they
approved
want to have
businesses.
there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It's like high
It's like
school
they got to
mentality.
go with the status. Yeah. It's exactly. It really. But we're all grown-ups here.
Allegedly.
Well, we are, but
Allegedly,
the people running the show are. Yeah. Oh, jeez.
To take a quick minute, though, in case anyone's wondering what this random blue thing on my shoulder this whole night has been, we went to a convention this weekend, and there's a gentleman who made 3D printed objects, so I got a salamander.
Danny's really confused because he can't see the video. He's like, "What the hell's going
I'm not
on?"
watching live right now.
Well, if you watch it later, now you'll see what I'm talking about.
Visualizing it right now.
Right.
It moves and stuff. It's 3D printed, but it's got joints and like it wiggles. It's adorable. So I got it to put on the
that's
desk.
cool.
But I can't keep it balanced on my shoulder any
All right,
longer.
back on topic. You're gonna piss
Anyways.
everybody off.
Oh,
You're gonna
yeah.
be in the comments yelling at us.
That's okay.
Don't do that. We're on to something here.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, like we got some comments rolling here, but yeah, if anybody's got any questions you want to ask, because we're trying to get to where we can do get people to call in with the guest on, but right now I don't have a way to do that.
There is a really good comment actually on the note I do want to bring up. Terry, forgive me if I butcher your last name. I'm very sorry. Is it Figure?
I think it's Terry Figured.
Figured brought up that it's a very good point. If you have your medical marijuana card, you basically also in turn, yay, you get your medicine. But by the way, you got to give up your Second Amendment right, so you better go forfeit all your everything.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but because of the way, it's almost like the medical marijuana card is a hindrance. So you should never reveal your medical marijuana. I'm just going to say this out loud to any medical marijuana patient out there: do not reveal your medical marijuana patient status to law enforcement, because they weaponize that against you. Essentially, they find it as a reason to possibly search, or they use it as a reason to. If you're driving a vehicle,
magically now you were high and driving.
Now it's a DUI essentially.
Mm-hmm.
They now it's probable cause to open up in a DUI investigation, and then you have to submit to sobriety tests, blood tests, or they can take your license right then and there. Which is they don't give you a way out at all.
And that's even more ridiculous.
Who wants to get who wants to take a blood test to prove that, and knowing with THC, it stays in your system over a month. So you could not have smoked, but if it's in your system, they're going to say DUI.
And not only that, everybody's body composition is different as well. THC sticks to your fat cells. So depending what weight you are, how your body processes things, you might have barely smoked anything in the last month and a half. It could have been months that you haven't smoked. Depending how you're built, it could still show up a little bit in your system. So you can think you're free and clear and still get nailed to the cross, basically. There's no way to defend yourself on that.
Yes. We could get into that topic of the rights and how you protect yourself on that front. We could talk about that all day, but yes, the one thing is to not reveal your status to them at all.
Exactly.
Well, rule number one: don't talk to the police. Don't even talk to the police.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's your Fifth Amendment right. You have the right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself. So use those things and don't say anything to them.
Yep. And I guarantee you can ask any cop and they will tell you no one has ever talked their way out of charges. If they're going to charge you with something, they're going to charge you. You're only going to dig the hole deeper. And what a lot of people don't realize is, say you have 3 different witnesses that, they're going to tell 3 different, slightly different stories. So you tell something that is truthful, and 2 of the witnesses say otherwise. The cops are like, oh, well, he's lying. That's why you don't talk to the police. You're just going to dig yourself a hole. Even if you're telling the truth, you can dig yourself a fucking hole. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's my advice, and any attorney will tell you the same thing.
and they get tricky with it because the whole good cop bad cop, they play nice with you and pretend that they're your friend and that they'll help you out if you just talk to them, or if you don't, now they're like, oh, you're gonna just dig a hole deeper for yourself if you don't want to cooperate. So
well, you got to remember, these guys are professionals. Okay, they do this every day. Some of them have been doing this for 20 years. They know how to get you to say what they need you to say.
Yes, exactly. And all as soon it's one of those things where it's a snowball effect. Once you open your mouth and start going, they know how to coerce you into keep on talking.
Yep.
So it's never good. Do not talk to the police. I don't know if you've seen the video shorts of the 2 lawyers that go around and they're like, hey, when the police want to talk to you, shut the fuck up is what they tell us.
Best advice you'll ever get.
Fifth Amendment right to shut the fuck up. So it's like, yes, take that advice of all things, no matter what they try to do. Because the thing is, when you don't cooperate, a lot of times they'll do something that'll violate your rights because you're not cooperating, and that's where you get them on a civil suit.
And that's the other reminder is record everything. Record everything.
I agree. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because now you have documentation, and they could say they have their body cams good, but I'm glad you have your body cam.
Well, it's funny.
If I film also, right?
It's funny because those body cams, when they don't back up what the cops are saying, they get written over and disappear, and all this weird stuff happens.
I accidentally hit mute on it and put my hand right over top of it. Sorry, forgot it was there, guys.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
It
And
feels
see,
weird for me
any
to
of
say
that
it.
stuff, anything that where that's involved, it should immediately be thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna hide something, mute something, then you're doing something wrong, and it should be whatever. It should be thrown out. It's like a evidence issue.
Yep. They call that
Tampering with evidence, essentially.
false in one, false in all. If you
Right.
lie
Right.
about one thing, you're probably lying about other shit too.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a scary too to think because like all these instances pop up and then you got the other guys that show up and you're like, oh yay, someone to see the truth. No, they all buddy up. And I know for a fact that to be true because my own father has told me about instances when he was in the sheriff's department down in Virginia for his 20 years and then up here for another, or up in Pennsylvania for another 16 doing law enforcement. He's like, there's a lot of, buddy buddy things going on.
Yep.
It's all in who you know. You always back the blue kind of a deal. And now obviously he's older, so it was a little different, more maybe extreme in some ways back then. But oh yeah, I can think of many stories he used to tell us about things that he saw that just didn't sit right with him because he's like, they were wrong. But
Yeah.
and it's our job to do right, but we're wrong here. And the other guys aren't just rolling with it and laughing like, oh yeah, buddy, you got away
Well,
with it again.
nobody wants to be the thumb that sticks out. You
Yep.
know.
Because if you
Yep.
are, then you
Or
get
the
nailed.
nail. Nobody wants to be the nail that sticks out. You get hammered.
Exactly.
One of them things, and that's part of that's where when it becomes a culture, that's what's wrong. That's what's wrong with it. When it becomes a culture where it's just back the blue, then it's just you're gonna do wrong and then have the power of the law and force behind you, and we the people are stuck trying to sort it out,
Yep.
and that's not the way the system is supposed to be.
Exactly.
So
Well,
like
it's
having these conversations helps just raise awareness, and it's like there's different ways. There's ways that we can individually protect ourselves, but then raise awareness on those that hold us accountable. We need to hold them accountable. They're
Yep.
our public servants.
Exactly.
They work for us.
Exactly. And we've let them fall from grace and now we basically condone it. That's why they continue
Yes,
to do it. They
exactly.
work for us. So we
Yep.
need to start speaking up and being the bitch ass manager Karen over here and being like, knock it the
Yes.
hell off.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
Where's the HR department?
Exactly. It's got to start somewhere. And the more people that think that they can't make a change is why there won't be a change. You have to help. You have to at least take that step forward with anything. You want to be healthier. You want to do better in life. We want to see change. Then be part of the change.
well,
Don't
and
sit and wait for it. It'll never come.
let's touch on voting for a second because these off-year elections, the turnout is absolutely horrible, and that's why these shitty DAs and magistrates, and that's why they get in there because all their friends go out and vote for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you have 20% turnout, that's only 20% of registered voters. I think about a third of people in Blair County aren't even registered to vote.
Right. Right.
So that needs to change too.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yes. We need to have somehow we need to a lot of times like I don't think that Pete Weeks I don't think he had opposition in this last run, so that's
Nope.
another problem also is like if there's not a viable candidate, then what choice is there? It's
Well,
like he
and-
just kind of gets ushered back into the seat by default.
Speaking of that, there was a little bit of fuckery that went on. The last challenger of the DA's office was when Bob Donaldson ran against Consiglio in 2017.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Now, Consiglio should have just stepped down because he was old and he was losing his freaking mind. All right. I doubt many people would disagree with me on that because he was just out of his mind. All right. And he should have stepped aside. Pete Weeks should have ran. But they knew if Pete Weeks ran, there was a chance Donaldson could beat him. Donaldson probably wasn't going to beat Consiglio just because of the name, basically.
Uh-huh.
So they kind of rigged it, and Rich only did not even 2 years, I think. So 2 years out of a 4-year term, and then first assistant Pete Weeks gets promoted to DA when Rich retires.
Yeah, automatically.
Yep.
I feel like we could probably
Yeah.
cover this forever, honestly. There's just so much. It's
Yes.
literally a
There's
rabbit
so
hole.
much. Yeah.
It's an
Yeah,
iceberg,
yeah.
actually. You think you're there, and then you get
Yeah.
underneath, and it's like, oh my God, there's more?
Well,
Yes,
if there's
there
one
is
thing
more.
you take from tonight, don't talk to the police, record everything, and go register to vote and be informed and vote. All
And
right,
know your
that's
rights. You know, if you, especially
Yes,
like if
you're
you're a
right.
medical
Yeah.
marijuana patient, go maybe read up on some stuff to make sure that you're, you know, covering and protecting yourself to the best of your ability, and know your rights. Like, this is your medicine. You have
mm-hmm.
every right to your medicine. So verse yourself. So if they try to give you a hard time about it, you don't have to, you know, worry too much, so to speak. Like, you're already sick, you
Yeah.
need your medicine. Like, don't stress yourself out anymore. But
Yes.
don't give them a window to
Just
screw
be
with
a
you.
little bit more careful because you know how aggressive they are about enforcement. But
Mm-hmm.
to even touch on that topic, like let's say, to even with cannabis especially, a lot of people get hit for minor cannabis offenses. There are not a lot of people that are like that they're getting for selling narcotics. A lot of the marijuana charges are like small possession, paraphernalia, things like that. Like medical patients get swept up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the whole idea with that situation is, I know it sounds scary and a lot of people don't want to go through it, but the reality is the more people that would challenge those small possessions, those paraphernalia charges, and let it go to a trial, now you put the DA in a position where, are the costs of a trial for small possession worth having a try, worth trying this person? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times you can get it knocked down to the smallest thing, a summary, a fine, or sometimes dismissed the whole way, because now you have to have a jury trial in front of 12 and waste all the county resources to try somebody for a small possession of marijuana.
Well, and
See what I
speaking of
mean? So
juries,
people actually stood up to these small possessions and these paraphernalia charges and took them all the way to the point of picking a jury. You're going
mm-hmm.
to make the DA think twice about prosecuting these kind of cases.
Well, and that's the other thing is the jury has the discretion to nullify. And
Yes, that's a big thing.
I know
Good.
Pete
I'm
Weeks'
glad you
head's going
brought
to
that up.
explode when we bring this up, but yeah, if you don't agree with the law, you don't have to convict somebody. You can think they're
Yes.
guilty as hell, and you can say, nope, I'm not going to convict them. You can jury nullification has been around since the beginning of this country.
And especially now
Yes.
that the stance on medical marijuana has shifted, in at least the public eye, into a
Well, I
better
don't even
light. If
care
you
if
push
it's
it to a
medical. Who
jury,
gives a shit? Small
small, but
possession that goes to
exactly.
trial.
Yes.
But my point is,
Yes.
now it's become more
Yes.
positive in the public eye. You push it to a trial, they're like, okay, so what? They got a little bit of weed. At least they're not shooting up heroin and, like, you know,
Yep.
beating people up in the Sheets parking
Yes.
lot, or, you know,
Yep.
Absolutely.
all right,
And
why did
that's
I
the
have to take
thing.
time
I'm
off for?
glad you brought up that jury nullification, because this takes it full circle also. With alcohol prohibition ended on the backs of jury nullification, where moonshiners were getting tried
Mm-hmm.
and juries were not convicting them. And the government was like, well, shit, we can't even charge these people. Juries aren't convicting them. So
Well, wasn't that the same
that
thing
was
happened in
part of what led to
Colorado?
the end of alcohol prohibition, was that juries just stopped convicting people of alcohol possession charges.
Mm-hmm.
The
Well,
people decided it was an unjust law.
yeah,
Get rid of it.
I'm pretty sure
Yes,
that's how
exactly.
Colorado ended up where it was too, with the uh, recreationally legal and everything, because people just weren't convicting.
They weren't convicting, yes, and that's the thing. That is what separates it. Is that with the trials, we a lot of people think that it's just about the law and the fact, and that is not it. The We the people take back our power by injecting justice into the situation, by taking our own personal feelings about the law itself
Yep.
and saying, well, this is an unjust law, so we're not going to agree with this, with convicting this guy.
Yep.
And people need to understand that, because, like, they amend laws all the time, they change laws all the time to update them, or, you know, better sit however they want them. So why can't we, the general population that are abiding by these laws, also not have an opinion of saying, like, you know, maybe back then it was a good idea, but anymore we really don't need this, or yeah, this is just stupid. Can we just
Well, let's
abolish it,
face
get rid
it,
of it?
the marijuana prohibition's always been bullshit. So,
Oh, oh, don't.
Yeah.
Oh, I will hardcore. That will be the hill
And
I
see,
die
that's
on.
why I'm really glad that you brought up the nullification, because that is a way to take the power back, because they slow roll the amendments and all that through politics and whatnot. But
yep.
jury nullification is the biggest and loudest way that we can say we don't agree with this law, and you're not. It's gonna be a hindrance to you to keep charging people, because we're just gonna keep saying not guilty.
Yep. And that is the jury nullification is the best defense against malicious prosecutors because it makes them look stupid.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, the messed up part about it is that they'll actually try to hide information about jury nullification from a
Mm-hmm.
jury, or some judges will even say that you can't. You have to rule on facts and law. Like
I'm
that's
sure there's been at least one person charged with tampering with a jury for handing out pamphlets at jury selection, which is interesting because as long as you're doing it before the jury gets picked, how are you influencing the jury? They're not the jury yet.
they're not the jury.
So,
Yes, anybody has the well. When you're giving, that's the if you're giving them to them all, you don't know who the jury's going to be. So
yep,
that person will take whatever they'll take from it, but
yep,
you don't know what they will or won't take from it.
yep.
But yeah, with the cannabis especially, I think that a lot more people it's similar to the jury nullification where if enough people who had small possession or paraphernalia charges took it the whole way, now you're putting the DA in a position to okay, is it worth the county resources to keep prosecuting these small possessions and paraphernalias?
Right.
Now it's like you're trying to just pad your stats with small, minor, victimless crime convictions. It's like
Well,
when
and
there
just
is
the
actual real crime like pedophilia and all these other things that you let slide.
Like you
yep,
said
It's
earlier,
like,
you were reading through, and every other thing was either child molestation or rape.
yeah, on the Altoona Mirror, you look over the last 2 weeks, it's like every other story is one or the other.
And
right.
I was talking to a woman in the dispensary today, and it was an older woman, and it was kind of funny because I'm a people person, so people just naturally talk to me, but she just started kind of going on and on about how, she was a new patient. She'd always been nervous about marijuana because of the stigma during her era growing up, as she worded it. But she was telling me how, she finally gave it a chance, and she was seeing the other day when she was doing research, she saw that a video of a young child that had epilepsy that they had treated with, I believe it was CBD oil mixed with a little bit of
Yeah.
THC, and it
Hmm.
literally stopped all of their seizures, and it was preventing and if not and going so far as to even cure completely by the time they reached adulthood. So I had shared
Yeah.
with her a video I saw about a gentleman who had Parkinson's that was given another compound mixture of THC and CBD and how it stopped his tremors. I want all these damn politicians to sit down and watch these videos and then turn around and look me in the eye and tell me with a straight face and mean it that they still think marijuana is such a bad thing
Mm-hmm.
and that there's no medical
Or
benefit
or
to it.
that or that or that prohibiting it is saving the children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
'Cause
I want
obviously
every
the
one of them to
evidence
watch
shows
that and look me in the
opposite.
eye and mean it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the evidence you're talking about is showing the opposite. It's actually saving children. So what are we talking about here?
Yep.
And the
Exactly.
thing about cannabis is, and this is more what what me and my wife touch on, True Healing Concepts. We really how you were saying that it was the combination of CBD and THC. That's an
Correct.
important thing when it comes to cannabis. The entourage effect, the terpene profile,
Yes.
CBD, THC, even all of these minor cannabinoids that are on the news now, Delta 8, Delta 10, they're all naturally occurring cannabinoids and they all help aid. It's like when you're concentrating on just THC or CBD, you're just taking part of the cure. You see, if when you're
Exactly.
using the plant in a more of a holistic medicinal way and you add all of the cannabinoids in there, even the non-psychoactive ones, there's an entourage effect that happens where the plant is more beneficial to you in that form than just extracting THC or just CBD.
Exactly. It's basically it's science.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
so many things, and depending on how you implement it, whether you are smoking it, using it as an oil, or eating it, like there's 1,000 different ways that it'll then react with your body as well. Just so for them to constantly just try to blanket it is ridiculous. You
yeah.
can't blanket something like that. It's a very complex plant that can become even more complex depending what you do to it.
Yes, and the lawmakers themselves, they don't understand the complexity of it because the reality of it is the 2018 Farm Bill that legalized hemp,
Hmm.
there is literally, because they specifically made Delta 9 THC the factor that determines legal cannabis or illegal cannabis, there is a very, very, very razor thin line between what could be considered legal hemp and what could be considered illegal marijuana.
So how do you take, a room and a grace kind of wiggle zone that's that small to begin with? You basically eliminate it and kind of set everyone up for failure too on that one. Like, you got to leave a little wiggle room because everything's going to test differently at different times, and naturally, as it.
The thing is with the way that they worded the law, especially, it's like they soft legalized cannabis and even many forms of quote marijuana. I don't like to say marijuana, but what would be considered marijuana. They soft legalized many forms with the 2018 Farm Bill. If people actually read the law and understood it for what it says, there was actually soft federal legalization in 2018 with the hemp Farm Bill. That's why we're having all this dispute about the Delta 8, because check it out, like because the limit's 0.3%, Delta 9 THC. Anything above that's illegal marijuana. Anything below that's legal hemp. But anything below that's legal hemp, it's any and all cannabinoids derived from hemp, extracts, isomers, this, that. And if it complies with this section of the Farm Bill, it's not going to be considered a controlled substance. That's also written into the bills. So because the bill is a newer bill than the Controlled Substances Act, you have a lot of forms of, quote, marijuana that are actually legal hemp by the wording of the law.
Wow.
All right.
Would you mind at the end of the show, if not tonight, maybe tomorrow, would you mind if you can you find a way to like post a link to that Farm Bill, the 2018 Farm Bill?
Yeah,
This way, if anybody, because we've brought it up, well, rather you've brought it up a good
I can
amount of
bring
times.
up
This
the
way,
2018. I can bring up the 2018 Farm Bill, and then there's Act 92, which is Pennsylvania specific, which introduced industrial hemp for research and education purposes.
okay.
And then there's Senate Bill 335, which was drafted in 2019. It's PA, Pennsylvania Senate Bill, and it specifically, the language in it matches the hemp farm bill. So in Pennsylvania, I can give you links, send that stuff over to you guys.
If you wouldn't mind, this way we can either tag it in the comments or just post it separate. This way, if anyone does want to actually sit down and read it the whole way through, they have it easily accessible to them. Because I know
that's a little thing. And I honestly, I'm very happy about hemp and the direction that it's going, because hemp essentially is going to push cannabis marijuana legalization. It's going to be the thing that pushes it over the edge, where they have to actually do it, because like I said, the way that they wrote the bill, it opened the door for a bunch of cannabinoids, and even, like I said, some forms. I educate people using their own medical marijuana containers. I say, well, technically, if this product right here was not processed by a medical marijuana facility under the Medical Marijuana Act of Pennsylvania, then it could technically be considered hemp.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we've been going for about an hour. I think probably call it good for tonight, because I do want to try and get some calls. I don't know if we'll have anybody calling or not, but just want to make a closing statement.
Yeah, I mean, this was a great conversation. I appreciate you guys having me on to talk about the situation here, to help progress not just cannabis and opening people's eyes up about the war on cannabis and where it originates from, but just overall about being aware of your rights, how to protect yourself as a medical marijuana patient, jury nullification. All of these things are important. And I knew that we were going to get into this when I saw that the name of your podcast, Better Dead Than Red. I love the name.
I'm glad somebody gets it, because a lot of people don't.
So I'm like, I got to see if I can get in on this podcast. So I appreciate you guys inviting me, because it aligns with things that I believe, and you guys, obviously, with the way you speak and the name of the podcast, we align. So I appreciate you guys just letting me on, and
we appreciate you being willing to come on and talk about it.
Absolutely. I think everybody probably learned something tonight, so that's a good thing.
Yes. And that's what we want. We're just out here trying to teach and help people learn and grow their awareness. So
absolutely.
Because of all those things, helping people recognize what their rights are, helping people recognize how to fight back against the system, how we can all come together, stick together, jury nullification, take our power back as the people. I mean, all of these things are things that are going to help us all. So
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we will definitely have you back on soon because I think there's a lot more conversations we can have. So,
Oh, absolutely.
yes, for sure, for sure. Thank you guys very much.
yep, you're very welcome, and we really appreciate you coming on. So, have a good
Enjoy,
night, and we'll
Appreciate
talk
you
to you
guys.
later.
Yes.
enjoy the rest of your
All right.
weekend.
All right.
All right. You as well.
All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Danny.
All right. Bye.
All right, guys.
This
So
was a very informative podcast, I feel.
I think this was probably the best one so far, honestly. So
I really appreciate how well versed he was and what he was talking about as well. And I was excited because I try to explain certain things like this to my husband when it comes to the cannabis. So to hear someone else bring it up, it was like, yes, vindication.
well, anybody that knows me knows I love to learn new stuff. So there's a lot to learn. There's a
I
lot to
learned a lot
learn.
tonight too, honestly, because like I'm more versed in the THC. All right, we got a call coming already.
Oh boy. BDTR live. What's on your mind?
Hey there, this is Deb Weston. I wanted
Hey,
to call in. You guys did a great job.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. So I wanted to thank Danny Rivera for his information. I thought it was very informative. And I wanted to also add some things to this. This whole situation with the CBD and the store being busted for, selling products illegal, this is where the disconnect is between the community and law enforcement. Nobody is okay with authoritarian control over the people.
Right.
So there's such a disconnect because you go to one town and somebody does commit the crime like a retail theft and they get bail set, they're out on the street the next day, and let's say they get probation. Then somebody else does the same exact crime and they end up in jail for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 225,000 crimes that can be committed in the United States that can land you in prison. But the small local law enforcement are up people's ass that I can't tell the difference between them and a proctologist. So they'll pull you over for going 1 mile over the speed limit or having a single joint in your vehicle. And they'll nail you to the wall for something like that.
Yeah, but
This
if you have a bunch of kiddie porn on your phone and you used to work for the victim witness office, so just get probation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Disgusting.
And there's so much unevenness. There's so much unfairness. And believe me, you guys know more than anything what we've been through recently.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't talk about that situation because we are in the appeals process as I speak. So we have a lot of good things that we will be able to appeal on. But my message is for everyone that possibly picked for a jury, you need to stop pleasing law enforcement. They make mistakes. You can't convict people when you see reasonable doubt. And these same people that sit on these juries are the same people that vote for the prosecutors, like the district attorney, the judges, and et cetera, et cetera. They don't want to go against those people, no matter if they're horrible,
Mm-hmm.
if they make blatant, horrible, awful mistakes. So the jury nullification is all well and good, and that was a great point, but we don't have juries in Blair County that are willing to cooperate with that.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
even acknowledge it. I witnessed with my own eyes a jury having reasonable doubt slap them so hard in the face that it knocked them on their ass, and they still went with a conviction.
Mm-hmm.
That is what's unfair in this county, and I am just at a point where I have no faith in the judicial system whatsoever.
And that's where a
And
lot of
it-
people
it-
were at this point with
it's
it
been
because it's
horrible.
constant unfair.
Whenever you have professionals, forensic specialists, private investigators, witness testimony, you have a confidential informant who's high on something testifying while he's under the influence of meth in front of a jury, and they still convict the defendant. That's
Yeah.
a huge problem in this community. And that's one of the reasons why this store is being targeted, because they want this authoritarian rule over the community members. They don't want anybody else to have any kind of say. You know, you can try and stand up to them, but if we don't have the numbers and we don't congregate together and start pushing back against this unjust system that we have. And I want to also add, we are very much aware of the systemic racism within the Blair County judicial system.
Yeah.
And Mr. Rivera just mentioned that, and I agree with it 100%. I will never, ever in my life, ever put a back the blue sign in my yard ever, ever again. They are not here to protect me. They are here to arrest me and make a damn fool out of me. And that's what they've done to me, my son, and my family. And it's not over. They think it's over, but it's not. So that's just what I have to say. And you guys, great job. I really enjoy your podcast. You guys are very professional and you do so wonderful. And, you know, if anyone out there wants to agree or disagree with me, I don't give a flying fuck. That's just how I feel.
Well, that's why
So
we
we
put
love you.
that's why we put the number on the screen. So you know, but there, anybody
Yeah.
that knows how to use a phone can call in. So
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
care, agree or disagree. If you want to come in and debate something, you want to call in with a negative opinion, that's fine too. We want to hear feedback, good, bad, and different, because that's a great thing. You're allowed an opinion.
Right.
yeah,
And that's, you know, we need to, you know, the whole defund the police campaign, I'm sorry, but I'm on board with it now. You know, at first I was like, oh, we don't want to defund the police. But the more my eyes are open and I just have to look around and see where the authoritarian bullshit that they're causing this store owner is ridiculous.
Exactly.
It's absolutely ridiculous. But if somebody breaks in my home tonight, I guarantee you they're not going to show up here for about 30 minutes or maybe longer or at all.
yep,
I have
Yeah.
no faith in them.
No.
Absolutely no faith. They're
'Cause
too busy
exactly.
worried about, you know, how much THC is in a product, if it's Delta 8 or not. And they don't even seem to know the laws themselves.
That's the
That's
scariest part.
really,
In my
Yeah.
opinion, that's the scariest part. We have these people wearing a badge to have this much power, and they don't even know what they're talking about.
yep,
and you know, the local representatives that we have, the commissioners, and we have a state representative, and Judy Ward is the senator. Why are they not getting involved in this? Somebody told me yesterday that they called Judy Ward's office and finally talked to somebody, and now she's going to look into it because she thinks there's some gray areas. That's it? She's
she
only
thinks
just
there's.
gonna
Did
look
she actually
into it?
read the fucking law? Like,
You know, it's like being a state representative is not a party.
No.
It's
No.
a job. Like, she works for us, and anybody else in those positions works for us. Same with law enforcement. They work for us.
Exactly.
And whenever they target people and then let other people walk, I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there, Richard Ewing. If they would have done what they should have done with Richard Ewing, the woman that he killed would still be alive today.
yep,
Whether anyone agrees with that or not, that is the ultimate truth. They have blood on their hands with that.
Absolutely.
So, and all they want to do is arrest the little guy, put him through hell, and then when you try to fight your case, you are fighting a very uphill battle.
yep,
And we tried it. I have to give my son credit for putting himself out there and trying to prove a point. And it didn't work out right now, but it will eventually.
hmm
So, but that's just the way it went for us. But this authoritarian rule over the community and the disconnect between law enforcement and the community has to
Yeah.
stop. And
Yep.
we need to start gathering in numbers and pushing back against it because it has to stop.
Something has to stop and something has to change, because the level of disconnect between the community and our representatives and our police force, it is so shattered right now. There's no trust. There's no, there's nothing. It's such a wavy, unbalanced surface. That's why everything's so chaotic as well. We need to reestablish that trust and that
Right.
balance. But the way things stand, it cannot be done. Something has to be changed.
Well, and
Right.
when you have Pete Weeks that says, oh, we can't prosecute the pedophiles, so we don't have enough resources. But then you see what they're wasting their resources on. It's like, okay, so, priorities maybe.
Yeah, definitely
Exactly.
priorities. No, we'd rather go
And if
after
you get on,
the drug dealers.
Yes.
and if you get on their bad side, look the fuck out.
Yep.
Because
Basically, yeah.
we've experienced that as well. And
Yep.
I've gotten some legal advice from different attorneys throughout Pennsylvania, and they looked up the case that I was just referring to, and they are appalled. It is the most bizarre case that they have ever heard of in their entire life. And I don't understand why nobody in Blair County that gets picked for a jury can't see through it. And they're allowing law enforcement to be that way with people, to make mistakes, arrest the wrong person, put them through hell. And they're allowing that. These juries are allowing these mistakes to happen. And that law enforcement do not have to do their job as long as they have dumbasses sitting on a jury.
So
That's
to
just the
touch
bottom
on
line.
something else you said just now about, God forbid, basically you get on their bad side. I kind of half wonder if that doesn't also influence the jury. Maybe some of them are scared to rule against the guys in blue and to argue and say that they think this is wrong because it'll be obvious. They can find out who disagreed and then they get targeted.
Right.
I'm
I
not
mean,
saying that's the
that
case,
could
but it was a
possibly
thought I
be,
just
but
had.
In my honest opinion, I think they want to please law enforcement. They all jumped on this Back the Blue campaign, and they don't want to go against that. They don't want to say, well, maybe I'm wrong about them.
Heaven
Maybe they
forbid.
do make mistakes. They have to rethink their whole life, and people won't do that.
Well, and it's
So
easy
they
to say you back law enforcement, and cops don't lie and all this until you get false allegations levied at you and you see how it goes.
Exactly.
Right. We can't put innocent people in prison. If even one innocent person goes to jail for something they didn't do, that's one too many.
Agreed.
Yep.
150%
This is
agreed.
what's happening in Blair County. People take plea deals because they know they don't have a fighting chance with the people in our community or people that get picked for juries. And these people they have blinders on. Like I said, reasonable doubt to slap them so hard in the face and knock them on their ass, and they'll still convict somebody.
Yep.
I've seen it with my own eyes now. It really happens. And, I feel bad for anyone in any kind of situation where you have to fight for your innocence. And the innocent till proven guilty does not mean anything.
No.
Those jurors had my son convicted before they stepped foot into that courtroom that day.
Yeah.
He was already guilty in their eyes. They didn't care what information was going to be given to them. They absolutely dismissed it and didn't care.
I
Did not
feel like
care.
that happens a lot. You go in and they already have it in your head if you're guilty, if you're right, if you're wrong, what you did, what you didn't do, and no matter what you say.
Well,
Right.
I think in fairness,
Right.
I think it's human nature. When you go in and somebody's sitting in the defendant's chair, you kind of are going to assume, okay, maybe they probably did something. But that's a big thing. Just like when we were talking to Danny about the overcharging and shit. Oh, we're going to charge you with 10 felonies whenever you maybe committed a misdemeanor. Just the plead thing. But
Exactly.
then when it goes to trial, that hurts you too because the jury's like, well, 10 felonies he must have done. I think that's what happened with Matt Starr. I think they just had they had so many stupid charges against him. The jury's like, well, we got to convict him on something.
Right. That's exactly what happened.
Because especially when they drop the
That's-
felonies, they never have to explain to the jury that, oh, by the way, we just basically threw this shit at the wall hoping something would stick. And,
Yep.
but none of it was true. So like you said, they see all these felonies and are like, damn, they must have had something and decided that they wanted to at least nail him on something. So obviously he did it.
Yep.
Right. And I am so sick and tired of these people. The Constitution. I support the Constitution. I'm a constitutionalist.
Have you read it?
But when it comes to somebody else's constitutional rights, they don't give a fuck.
Yep.
They don't. They absolutely don't care. They probably have never read the Constitution. They have no idea what it says.
No, we have a nice
So,
book
but
with the Constitution written out in it. I'm going to start carrying that around with me when people give us flack about it and they start quoting the Constitution. I'm just going to hand them the book and be like, okay, well, go to the page and show me which part that's under because
You
I
know what we
missed
should
it.
do?
exactly,
We should get you can order
exactly.
those like little pocket constitutions. We should send a bunch of them to like the courthouse. Here you go,
Right.
Pete. Read it.
And here's my other thing is with as far as like,
Pardon me.
as far as like juries are concerned. I haven't gotten a jury
Hmm.
summons in over 30 years, and I've lived in Blair County all of my life.
Hmm.
Now, why am I not getting picked to see to report to jury duty? Why are the same people getting picked over and over again to sit on a jury? That
Hmm.
should tell everybody right there what's really happening in this county.
I've never in my life been picked
So,
for jury duty. Never once. Not once.
Well,
Never.
that's a
yeah,
funny story. The last time I got picked, because I show up and there's Rich, Randy Feathers, and Mill Iron are standing there. You know, Rich said, "Oh, what you here for today?" And I was like, "Well, I'm here for jury duty, so maybe you can help me because I know damn well I'm not going to end up in a fucking jury in this county." So I go in
exactly.
and it was Mill Iron was the judge.
Oh,
So I go up and basically like, well, you know who I am, so you're gonna dismiss me or what? And he's like, oh,
Exactly.
and he kind of like looked at me funny. He's like, well, was Brian Grable your attorney? And I said, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you're good to leave.
See you later. We don't need you.
Yep.
please leave.
Well,
Please go.
because they know that you're going to listen to the case, and if there's reasonable doubt, if you hear something and you have to pause to think about it, that is reasonable doubt.
Well, and it
And
just in good conscience, it would be hard for me to convict anybody in Blair County because I know the cops lie, the prosecutors lie. Maybe they have a vendetta against
exactly
this person, maybe they don't. Maybe this person's guilty of sin, maybe they're not. But you know, it's just
Exactly.
right, laws are laws,
yep.
and I agree. So, but that's pretty much the gist of what I wanted to say. So,
It's always
but
good to hear from you.
thank you
Yeah.
very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you for calling in. It's always good to hear from you, and we wish you the best with everything upcoming. And we hope to talk to you later.
All right, thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Bye, Deb.
I love her.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a moment again to show off our wonderful new salamander guys since no one's called back in yet in case anyone joined in late. But
Yeah, we got
excuse the green screen.
412-440-3484 if you want to call in.
Let's see, it's got like joints and stuff.
I'm really surprised like nobody called in like, oh, the devil's lettuce. Maybe they're smart enough to like not try to debate us on that. I
You
don't
know,
know.
I would hope, especially as expressive as I have been tonight about the whole thing, especially that will be the hill I die on with my Crohn's. And while we're in the dead space, I'll get into that one more. I had very severe Crohn's. It took them a hot minute to figure out what it was. By the time they found out what I did, in fact, have going on with me, my bowel right before my colon had a small part of it had become necrotic. It was dead and it was spreading and killing the rest of my good bowel. I had to have basically an emergent surgery to remove a good chunk of it. I had 11 staples down the front of me from them slicing me open pretty nastily, honestly. Like I've had other surgeons look and be like, "Why did they butcher you?"
Yeah.
I would love to know the same. So I went through a lot of pain and a lot of problems and a lot of hell, to make a long story short. So when I did finally find medical marijuana and did my research, and like I said, I do my research. I look up what terpenes are going to help with my inflammation, what are going to help me eat, what are going to help me sleep, what's going to actually alleviate the problems I have with my Crohn's, because everyone with Crohn's is very different. My brother and I, my younger brother and I, we both have Crohn's, but ours acts very differently from each other. So I've done my research. I know what helps me. And out of all the medicines, the medical marijuana helps me. My husband sees. He will tell you if I'm out of my meds for too long. I'm sorry, dear.
Yeah,
I love you.
I just get in the car and get down the road and don't come back till she gets them.
But I am miserable. It's to the point I can't move sometimes, and I'm in so much pain. Like I'm not sitting around getting high all day. Like I'm in pain. I smoke a little, and it alleviates the pain. Now I can clean the house. I can, play with our daughter. She's a big kid. that absolutely killed me when she was little before I got it figured out that, I've got a newborn. I can't get out on the ground and play with her because everything just hurts. And it's dangerous for me to do so if I do it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like finding that medicine that genuinely helps me so much. I'm sorry. I don't care if it becomes illegal tomorrow. That will be the hill I die on. You are not taking away my ability to play with my child and to live a normal of a life as I can with a disease that I had no control over. It's not like I did something to get Crohn's. You have it or you don't. Genetics are basically how it happens. I didn't have say in this, but I do have say in how I treat myself. And I found what works best for me. And I'm not letting anybody, especially the government, tell me that, oh, you can't have your medicine. We want you to do these hard pills anyway, and all this other
Well, that's
crazy
the
shit
thing
that
is
doesn't
the,
even
the,
work.
The pharma treatments are just awful. I mean, it's like you're killing yourself to live when you're taking that shit.
That Humira is what made me pass out. That stuff was nasty. You got to give yourself an injection. It's a big freaking like pen looking thing that you got to hold and stab yourself with. I mean, it's I don't like needles, believe it or not. I know I'm covered in tattoos, y'all have seen, but like I hate needles. I am the biggest baby in the world. You got to give me an IV, you got to give me a shot. I'm all about crying like our child. I'm a wuss when it comes to that. Tattoos are different. Another story for another day, but like and especially that stuck so hard with me though, because it was literally within an hour after getting the Humira injection. I walked back into my house. My brother looked up at me. Apparently, I didn't look good. I didn't really feel good, but it was cold out, and I just figured, oh, I went from cold to hot. Didn't think anything of it. I didn't even feel myself falling. That was the part that scared me, because if I had felt, maybe I could have turned, because if it was just me, what would have happened to my daughter? She was 9 months old. If I had fallen on her, I could have really hurt her. And that's all I kept thinking in that moment is, oh my God, I could have just hurt my baby. And I didn't even feel the fact I was falling. It took until my brother was over top of me, holding her, rocking her, calming her back down after he snatched her from me, being like, are you okay? Can you hear me? Like, try and sit up, put your head between your knees. That's scary. That's really scary. And that was the moment where I was like, no, I got to figure something else out. There's got to be something else better for this.
Yeah.
And I'll make the argument. I'm not a biblical person, but I'll make the argument. It's a plant. God put it here, so it can't really be that bad, right?
Yeah. So, all right, guys. I think everybody got something out of it tonight. I think we had a great conversation, probably one of the best ones we've had yet.
Absolutely.
So, definitely going to have Danny back at some point. Hopefully, everything goes well for him and his wife, because, I mean, if you've never experienced it, when you're dealing with false allegations or just when they're coming for you, it's very stressful. It costs a lot of money. It just completely sucks. So
and they're just trying to help people. His family doesn't deserve that, especially his kids and stuff. Like, nah, if they're out there trying to help people, that family deserves to find their peace.
Yeah.
And to keep going on.
And that's the thing is, like, I mean, they were being financially smart of like, hey, let's consolidate our resources so we can get a nicer place. And then they end up like in literal hell.
Yeah.
It's
There's so much wrong about that. We won't go back into it again, but
yeah. But yeah, we're gonna do Wednesday this week, so we'll see you guys on Wednesday, and we'll probably have some pretty interesting stuff. Probably not as good as tonight, but close. So
we'll do our best, like we always do.
We will do our best. So
thank you for joining us on your Saturday night.
Yeah. Have a good night, guys, and until next time.